You were told a story long before you ever understood its consequences. A story repeated by parents, teachers, films, and society itself, a story that shaped the way you see yourself and the way you approach women. Be kind, be respectful, be agreeable, be patient, and in return you will be chosen. It sounds noble. It sounds fair. It sounds like the path of virtue. But here is where the illusion begins. Because what is praised in public is not always what is desired in private. Watch closely, not what people say, but what they respond to. Observe behavior, not words, patterns, not promises. You will begin to notice something unsettling. The man who is always available often becomes invisible. The man who agrees with everything is rarely remembered. The man who tries too hard to please quietly loses his presence. And yet, somewhere in the same world, another man exists. He is not reckless, but he is not predictable. He does not seek approval, and therefore does not fear disapproval. He does not bend himself to fit expectations, and because of that, he stands apart. This contradiction is where most men become confused, because they have been trained to believe that attraction is a reward for good behavior, that if they follow the rules, they will eventually win. But desire is not a reward system. It is not handed out for effort. It is not granted for obedience. It does not operate on fairness. Desire is selective, instinctive, almost cruel in its honesty. It does not ask, "Is he a good man?" It asks, "Is he a compelling man?" And these two are not the same. The good man, as society defines him, is safe. He avoids conflict. He seeks harmony. He minimizes risk. He makes himself easy to accept. But in doing so, he often removes the very tension that creates attraction. Because attraction does not grow in comfort alone. It grows in contrast, in uncertainty, in emotional stimulation. The moment a man becomes entirely predictable, he becomes easy to understand. And the moment he is easy to understand, he becomes easy to overlook. This is the part no one explains to you. Niceness by itself is neutral. It does not create desire. It only maintains peace. And peace does not ignite curiosity. It does not provoke imagination. It does not create the subtle emotional friction that draws someone closer. Now, this is where many men make a fatal mistake. They hear this truth, and they swing to the opposite extreme. They believe the answer is to become arrogant, rude, or careless. They attempt to imitate what they think is bad behavior, without understanding the deeper principle beneath it. But that is not power, that is imitation without awareness. The man who is truly desired does not act out of rebellion, he acts out of self-possession. He does not try to be bad, he simply refuses to be controlled by the need to be seen as good, and that changes everything. Because the moment a man no longer seeks validation, his behavior becomes unpredictable. He says what he means, not what is expected. He walks away when something does not align, instead of negotiating for acceptance. He chooses himself even at the risk of losing others. And paradoxically, this is what creates attraction. Because now, he is no longer operating from need. And nothing weakens presence more than need. Need is loud, even when unspoken. It appears in over-explaining, over-giving, over-trying. It signals that a man is seeking something he does not believe he already has. But the man who is detached from outcome, the man who does not chase approval, the man who can walk away without hesitation, he communicates something far more powerful. He communicates that he is complete without permission. And this is where the illusion of the good man fully collapses. Because the truth is not that kindness is wrong, it is that kindness without strength is ignored. Respect without boundaries is dismissed. Availability without selectivity is undervalued. The world does not reward what is freely given without limit. It values what must be earned, what must be understood, what cannot be easily controlled. So when you look at attraction through this lens, everything begins to shift. You realize it was never about becoming worse, it was about becoming less dependent on approval, less dependent on being liked, less dependent on fitting into a role designed by others and more aligned with your own center. Because the moment a man stops performing, he starts existing. And existence, raw, unapologetic, grounded, carries a weight that performance never could. This is why the good man often feels invisible, not because he lacks value, but because he has been taught to dilute it, to soften his edges, to hide his intensity, to trade authenticity for acceptance, and in doing so, he becomes safe. But safety alone has never been enough to create desire. There is a part of you that you were taught to silence before you even understood its purpose. Not because it was useless, but because it was powerful. From a young age, you learned to restrain certain instincts, to control your impulses, to avoid confrontation, to soften your voice, your reactions, your presence. And while discipline is necessary, what you were given was not balance. It was suppression. Because buried beneath that conditioning, there exists something far older than rules. A force that does not ask for permission, a presence that does not negotiate for approval, a side of you that understands dominance, boundaries, and decisive action without hesitation. This is what we call the monster. But understand this clearly, the monster is not violence. It is not chaos. It is not blind aggression. That is what weak men imitate when they misunderstand it. The true nature of the monster is control. It is the ability to remain calm while knowing you are capable of intensity. It is the awareness that you can walk away or step forward without fear dictating your choice. The monster is not loud. It does not need to prove itself through constant display. It exists quietly beneath the surface, shaping how you move, how you speak, how you respond. And this is what makes it dangerous and attractive, because most people operate from reaction. They are controlled by emotion, by validation, by the need to be accepted. But the man who has access to this monster operates differently. He is not easily provoked, not easily manipulated, not easily influenced by the opinions of others, and that creates a presence that cannot be ignored. Think about it. What makes someone truly intimidating is not how loud they are, it is how little they need to be. It is the quiet confidence of someone who knows their capabilities, and therefore does not feel the need to constantly demonstrate them. This is the essence of controlled power, and here is where the misunderstanding begins, because society fears what it cannot control. A man who is too independent, too self-directed, too grounded in his own authority, cannot be easily shaped. So instead of teaching men how to master this force, they are taught to disconnect from it entirely, to become agreeable, predictable, harmless. But in removing the monster, they also remove the edge. And without that edge, a man may be accepted, but he is rarely respected at a deeper level, because respect is not built on compliance. It is built on the recognition of strength, not strength that dominates others unnecessarily, but strength that could, if required. This is the paradox. The monster is not about harming others. It is about no longer being weak enough to be controlled by them. It is the internal shift from seeking permission to defining your own standards, from reacting emotionally to choosing your response with precision, from chasing validation to standing firm in your own identity. And when this shift happens, everything about your presence changes. Your words become fewer but heavier. Your actions become slower but more deliberate. Your attention becomes selective rather than desperate. And people feel this even if they cannot explain it. Because most interactions are not logical, they are emotional. They are based on energy, tension, subtle signals that reveal far more than words ever could. The man who has embraced his monster does not try to impress. He does not over-explain himself. He does not rush to fill silence. He does not bend under pressure to be liked. And because of that, he creates space, space that others become aware of, space that draws curiosity, space that builds tension. This is where attraction begins to form, not in what is shown but in what is withheld. Now understand this carefully. The monster without control becomes destruction. If a man allows his impulses to lead without discipline, he becomes unstable, unpredictable in the worst way, driven by ego rather than awareness. And this is not power, this is weakness disguised as strength. True power is restraint, the ability to act but choosing not to unless necessary, the ability to dominate a situation but remaining composed instead. It is not about removing emotion, it is about not being ruled by it. And this is what separates men. Most men either suppress their intensity or are consumed by it. Very few learn to master it, to hold both calm and danger within the same frame, to be grounded yet capable, to be composed yet unshakable. And when a man reaches this level of control, he no longer needs to announce himself. His presence does it for him, because there is something unmistakable about a man who knows he cannot be easily moved. Something that signals stability but also potential, safety but not weakness, calm but not passivity. And this combination is rare. It cannot be faked through words or temporary behavior. It is built through internal alignment, through understanding, through discipline. Because the monster is not something you create. It is something you uncover. It has always been there in your instincts, your boundaries, your ability to stand firm under pressure. But it has been buried under years of conditioning that told you to be less, to want less, to express less. And the moment you begin to reconnect with it, you realize something important. You were never lacking. You were simply disconnected from your own power. There is a question that lingers in the mind of many men, though few dare to confront it honestly. Why does effort not always lead to attraction? Why does kindness, consistency, and availability sometimes result in being overlooked, while a different kind of man, one who seems less invested, commands attention without trying? At first glance, it feels unfair. It feels like a contradiction of everything you were taught. But the truth does not concern itself with fairness. It concerns itself with nature, and attraction, at its core, is governed far more by instinct than by logic. You see, when people speak about what they want, they often describe ideals, comfort, stability, respect, kindness, but when they respond emotionally, when attraction is triggered, they are not reacting to ideals. They are reacting to signals, signals of strength, signals of confidence, signals of certainty. And this is where the misunderstanding begins. Because niceness, as most men practice it, does not signal strength. It signals safety but also submission. It signals approval, seeking, rather than self-assurance. And while safety is appreciated, it does not create tension. It does not create curiosity. It does not create the emotional spark that makes someone feel something deeper than comfort. Power, on the other hand, operates differently. Power is not loud. It does not beg for recognition. It does not explain itself. It simply exists and influences everything around it. A man who embodies power does not need to convince anyone of his value. He behaves as though it is already established, and this subtle difference changes everything. Because when a man is rooted in his own authority, his actions become selective. He does not give attention freely. He does not chase validation. He does not adjust himself to fit expectations. And this creates something rare, scarcity. What is scarce becomes valuable. What is not easily gained becomes worth pursuing. This is not manipulation. It is the natural response to perceived value. Now contrast this with the man who leads with niceness alone. He gives quickly. He agrees easily. He prioritizes being liked over being respected. and in doing so, he removes the challenge. He removes the uncertainty. He removes the emotional engagement that fuels attraction. Because when everything is certain, there is nothing left to explore. An attraction thrives on exploration. It thrives on the unknown, on the subtle question of who is he, really, on the feeling that there is more beneath the surface, something not immediately accessible. Power creates that mystery, not through games, but through restraint. The man who does not reveal everything at once becomes intriguing. The man who does not react immediately creates anticipation. The man who does not depend on the outcome becomes unpredictable. And unpredictability, when combined with control, becomes magnetic, because now interaction is no longer one-dimensional. It has depth, it has tension, it has emotional movement. This is what draws people in. Not perfection, not politeness, but presence. Presence that feels grounded, self-contained, and unaffected by external pressure. Now understand this carefully. This is not about rejecting kindness. Kindness, when paired with strength, becomes respect. But kindness without strength becomes overlooked. The difference lies in intention. The man who is kind because he chooses to be holds power. The man who is kind because he fears losing approval gives it away. And this difference is felt, even if it is never spoken. Because beneath every interaction, there is an unspoken evaluation taking place. Not of words, but of behavior. Is he grounded or reactive? Is he choosing or seeking? Is he leading himself or waiting to be led? These questions are not asked consciously, but they are answered instantly through energy, tone, and presence. And the man who answers them with certainty stands apart. He does not rush. He does not overcompensate. He does not attempt to prove his worth through constant effort. Because he understands something most men overlook. Attraction is not built through giving more. It is built through being more centered, more disciplined, more aware of his own value without needing it to be confirmed by others. And when a man reaches this state, he no longer feels the need to compete. Because he is not trying to be chosen. He is deciding what aligns with him. This shift, from seeking to selecting, is the moment power replaces niceness as the driving force. And in that moment, something changes in how others respond. Because now, the interaction is no longer one-sided. It is balanced. There is space for tension, space for curiosity, space for genuine attraction to form, rather than forced connection. And this is what most men fail to understand. That attraction cannot be negotiated. It cannot be earned through effort alone. It cannot be secured through constant availability. It must be felt, and what creates that feeling is not how agreeable you are, but how grounded you are in your own presence. How unaffected you are by outcomes. How comfortable you are with silence. How willing you are to walk away rather than compromise your standards. Because in the end, power is not about controlling others. It is about no longer being controlled by the need for them.